Hello everybody, it's lovely to have you with us, and I would like to introduce Diana Dunk this afternoon, who is an estranged and alienated grandparent. And we often hear about estrangement and alienation in connection with separation and divorce. But we know that there are many different scenarios that grandparents find themselves in this situation. And it isn't always to do with divorce and separation. And Diana comes to this horrible place as a result of a family member estranging her, and consequently she doesn't see her grandchildren. So Diana, would you like to explain a little bit about how you find yourself in this position?
I live on my own, and I have done since the 70s, more or less. And I have a son who's 55 now, and I have 3 grandsons, and they're more or less grown up. They're 20, 19, and 17. And at the beginning, when my son was small, growing up, we were very close. We had a very close and caring, loving relationship. And I think probably because I was a single mother, that was more, you know, it intensified because of my situation. And my son he was wonderful. I never had a problem with him. He was very outgoing, very sporty, academic, everything that one could wish for, really. And he then married. He was just, I think, around 30. Well, it was 26 years ago, I think. 27 years ago. So I don't know what that made him, but anyway, he met this girl, a young lady, and I thought she was lovely. She was very outgoing, very sporty. They seemed a really, really good match, and they married, and it was a very happy affair. And but immediately after they married, they went abroad, and they went to live in America, because my son had actually been born in America, and his father lived over there, and he also obviously has family over there. But anyway, they went over, and I went to see them after a few months, quite a short time after the marriage, just for a couple of weeks. And my daughter-in-law got really upset because I had watered these flowers on the veranda, because they were wilting. It was very hot, and she really she said to me that she felt that I was just taking over, and I really just couldn't understand what was happening, and neither could my son. And anyway, she apologized, and we went on from there. But that, you know, looking back, it was the very first sort of seeds of what was to come. And I returned to the UK, and in fact, they came back after 2.5 years. And then they decided they had decided that any children they might have, they would like to have them over here, so that educate them over here, and so they would grow up in the UK. My daughter-in-law does have family here, and who she's close to, and as far as I know, remains close to. And so my 3 grandsons came along, and I would go down and stay with them periodically. And everything was okay, but there were just small things that happened that I just felt, well, it's so hard to explain, because in my situation, nothing actually, one thing happened, and that was, a division appeared. It didn't. It was so gradual. It was like a drip, drip, over the years, and my, it was things like if I phoned to speak to my son, well, he was quite often not available, and I would speak to my daughter-in-law, or I'd ask to speak to the children, and they were, busy in the garden. So it was sort of a distancing that came into being, and my visits there to see them also, got less. They would come to see me maybe twice a year, but the reason why why I did see them here was because my mother was also alive, and my son had been very, very close to his own grandmother, my mother, and so they would actually come and see her, but I would be included. And but through my grandson's childhood, my grandsons never ever came to stay with me, and I remember asking, it'd be nice if the boys could come and stay, and I was told that they were too young. Well, of course they weren't. They were, at that time, they were about 9, 8 and 6, but maybe a bit older than that. But anyway, they never came. So I have literally never spent any time alone with my grandsons. And it kind of makes you feel there's something wrong with you, that you're not to be trusted, that, which is really quite difficult to deal with. And as if you aren't able to look after them in the way they should be looked after while they're in your care. So anyway, time went by, and I wanted to come and see my grandsons at school, and of course that never ever happened either. I was never invited, and my eldest grandson, he was a great cricketer, and he would play for the school down in Somerset. They would every summer his school would go down and play at this other school in Somerset, and I thought that would be a great opportunity. And I was told by my son that grandparents simply weren't welcome, and no, really, it would be far better if I didn't. So anyway, one summer I thought, well, I'm going to go. And so I got in the car and I drove down, and my son was there, and my grandson was playing, and there was, a lovely scene at the school, and they were all playing, having matches, and lots of grandparents, lots of parents, and my son never kind of mentioned it, that that he prevented me from going in the past. And he just, you know, he didn't know I was going to show up. And he was very calm. He must have been shocked, but he was very calm. And we actually had a very nice afternoon. Then my eldest grandson, he went away to school, and I asked to if I could go and see the school. And again, my son said to me, "Oh no, nobody comes to visit the school." And I thought, well, this is ridiculous, because my son actually went away to school, so I know what, you know, how boarding schools work. And again, I decided that I'd actually speak to the matron, and I phoned up, and she said to me, "Oh," she said, "why don't you phone him, my grandson, on his mobile?" So I said, "Well, actually," I said, "I don't have his mobile." And she was absolutely shocked, because she'd never heard that a grandparent hadn't got the mobile number of their grandsons. And anyway, what happened from that conversation that I had with her, and I explained to her that I was estranged from all of my grandsons, and she said that she would speak to the housemaster. Well, the housemaster actually spoke to my son, which so a visit was planned. Obviously, my son felt that he had to do something. You know, he couldn't be seen. Yeah. And so again, I arrived at the school, and my grandson was there, and everything was fine. You know, I have never had a falling out with my son, and whenever I've seen him, he's given me a big hug, and he's really pleased to see me. And then when I've left, he's given me another big hug, and warmly, you know, said to me, "Thank you for coming." But then whenever I leave, the shutter comes down, and I will text him, or I'd email him, and I wouldn't get a response. And the very last time I saw him, which was in 2016, I said to him, "Why don't we, you know, why don't we just speak to each other once a month?" I said, you know, not once a week, or, you know, just once a month. Maybe we could just catch up and, you know, have a little update. And he didn't say yes, and he just kind of didn't reply. And then, you know, we said goodbye, and I went. And of course, that never happened. That never happened. And last year, my son's father, he died. And when this happened, his father lived in the States. And when this happened, my son immediately contacted me by email and said, I felt you should know, you know, you should be the first to know," he said, that his father had died. And, you know, I found that quite shocking, because my son had been estranged from his father as well, and since the age of 12. His father had remarried, and I understand through my daughter-in-law many years ago, she told me this, that my husband's new wife had said to him, "If you carry on seeing your son, I will leave you." And so my son's father took the decision to end the relationship with his son. And my son could never understand. He just wanted to know the reasons why. And but over the ensuing years, my ex-husband would never speak to him. And so when he died, my son, goodness knows how he felt,
No.
because he never got that explanation
No.
as to why. And about a year or so, a year or two before his father died, my son's uncle had died, and my son had flown out to America to the funeral, which my son's father refused to go to. So, and I thought perhaps, you know, funerals are so often a good opportunity, aren't they, to kind of mend bridges maybe, or just sort of connect. Well, he didn't have that opportunity because his father wasn't at that funeral. And he also refused to speak to him on the phone. So, you know, it must have been so painful for him to be so rejected and not know why. And but anyway, since his father died last winter, my son now doesn't speak to me.
No.
He doesn't respond to any text, nothing. And he told me that the last time I spoke to him was in the winter, and he said that he was going to fly out to go to visit the home where his father was for the last month of his life, just to sort of meet the people who had been caring for him.
Yes.
And he didn't know whether he would actually see his stepmother. And I have no idea what happened.
No.
I have no idea. I never heard from him again. And despite the fact that, you know, I asked him how did things go, and I never heard a word. And so now we're in, you know, 2020, and so I just feel my relationship is completely dead in the water. I mean, really dead. And
can I just
yes,
say, you know, as an observer, the compassion that you are showing, talking about your son being estranged from his own father, is remarkable, because actually he has done the same thing to you.
I know, but
that compassion shows so strongly in you.
Well, you know, even though he's chosen this for whatever reason, whether he's you know, I don't know how big a part my daughter-in-law plays in this, but I'm quite sure she does. And but no matter what, I just love him, and
that's plain to see.
I just love him, Jane, and nothing will change that.
No.
If I never see him or speak to him, you know, I will, you know, when I pass, I'll take the love that I feel for him with me, you know. But when, I mean, this is all rather depressing, you know, with these deaths, but in 2013, my mother died. And I was very close to my mother, and as my son was, as I mentioned previously. And it really knocked me hard when she died, and it affected my health.
Yes.
And I, you know, I think the loss of her, it affected my immune system. I felt very weak. I felt, you know, I felt quite faint often, that type of thing. And so by the time I got to 2 years later, I was feeling very, very unwell, and I had a thyroid problem, etc. And I became very, very depressed. I felt terribly alone because, of course, after she died, any visits that they had been making, my son up here, finished because my mother was no longer alive. And so I realized that, you know, this was going to go from bad to worse, and I was never really going to see him. All my grandsons, who were at that time, you know, still in their teens, and young teens. And anyway, I was just thinking. So when I got to 2015, 2 years later, I thought, I really have to do something here, because if I don't, I am just going to go under. I felt I couldn't cope with the sadness, the profound feeling of rejection, and I thought, okay, I've got to find someone who can help me, you know. And I thought, well, I should join a group. And so I looked in Oxfordshire, where I live, and there was nothing. And so I thought, well, I think at that point I had found you. I'm not quite certain of the, you know, but I do know that I spoke to you, and you were absolutely wonderful and so incredibly supportive. And I said I was going to start my own group because there was nothing. And so I asked for your help, and you really, you know, helped me to get going. And so from that moment, I then was interviewed on the radio, and I wrote to the Daily Mail, and I couldn't believe the interest. I couldn't believe the reaction that I was getting, and which so spurred me on, with you behind me. And so I had my first meeting, and in fact, I remember I didn't know how to even find the people who would like to come to the meeting. So you said to me, well, write to the local magazines, etc., which I did. And I had about maybe half a dozen, I can't remember, but about half a dozen people who came to the first meeting. And it was just fantastic to be able, for me, let alone them, but for us all actually, to be able to be with people who understood, who had the empathy, who had compassion for each other, and to be able to support each other. And so from that time on, I've been holding meetings monthly, and I have met so many people who all their stories are heartbreaking. And I can say that every grandparent that I have met are desperate to reunite with their adult child and their grandchildren. And, you know, grandparents are desperate. They are absolutely desperate. They don't know how to overcome the silence that they receive from their adult child. They don't know how to go forward, but having the group just gives them that feeling of not being alone.
I think it's a feeling of belonging as well, isn't it?
And yes, a belonging. It's a fantastic thing. And I would say, now I have this opportunity to speak, that everyone who is estranged alienated, if they search out for a group, because that will really, really help them to get through these very dark times that estranged parents and grandparents, you know, what we experience.
Yes.
And I know it doesn't solve the problem, but it really does help you to have that support.
Well, I think for you, and certainly I know for me, it sort of became my own therapy, you know, listening to other
Yes.
people who are going through similar, not the same, but similar circumstances as mine, just enables you to focus on somebody else rather than yourself, because it becomes all encompassing, doesn't it, when you're going through this awful living bereavement. And so it's good to be able to think about other people and to know you're not alone, as you've just said. And not only did you become a leader of a group, but you also became an author. And
Well,
you did what lots of people say they're going to do and never do, but you did it, and you wrote down your story and successfully got it published. So would you like to talk a little bit about that as well?
well, what happened there was that last year, I think at the beginning of last year, you know, because I'd met so many people and heard so many different stories of estrangement, and I've you know, it's taught me so much as well, just by listening to people, and you know, their emotions and how they're dealing with their lives. And I thought, you know, I really need to write about this, and perhaps not just write about estrangement and alienation and coercive control and all these things that, you know, are part of this estrangement, but to also write a book where I could help people to live with it, you know, by their side, because you have to live with estrangement.
Yes,
And you have to survive it while you have it in your life. And so that's what I decided to do, to not just write a book about the dark side, but also to give people hope.
yes.
And there is hope, and that you can actually change things for the better by changing the way you think, your concept of the whole situation. And so I called the book Beyond All Belief, because it is beyond all belief. You know, to be estranged from someone you love so much and care for, and you brought them up.
Yes.
In my case, you know, I brought him up, and also to lose out on not being part of your grandchildren's lives, which is, you know, it's debilitating, it's devastating. And so I put all this in the book, but I've also I have quotes in the book which are uplifting quotes for people, and also how to deal with the different aspects of estrangement. And in fact, it's called Beyond All Belief, a living bereavement, because that is what it is. We are living a living bereavement, and knowing that our child, our children, you know, our grandchildren are alive, they're somewhere, they're doing, you know, right this minute, you know, my son is there,
Yes.
somewhere.
Yes.
My grandchildren are,
Yes.
but I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they are. We've just gone through a pandemic. I didn't know whether my children, my whole family was safe.
No.
And that is, it's hard to describe.
Yes.
The feeling of disempowerment,
Yes.
you know, and I think you get a real sense of the enormity of estrangement when we've had something like this pandemic, where families so many families. There were, you know, talking to each other on Skype, on Zoom, on the phone. How many times did you read about grandparents who were, you know, so bereft because they all of a sudden they couldn't see their grandchildren? But this is something that estranged grandparents live with all the time.
Yes.
You know, and we don't have that. We don't have that opportunity at the end of this pandemic, like now, that we can see we can be reunited. We can't be.
No.
So it's very difficult.
So Diana, what's the emotional side for you, not being able to be connected with your son and his family? You know, it is an emotional abuse, I feel, but that's a personal thing. But you know, what about you from an emotional point of view?
Well, actually, in the book, I too have said it's emotional abuse. And I believe that it is. It's emotional abuse because your estranged adult child, they know what they're doing. I mean, obviously, they know what they're doing. That when they reject you, when they don't speak to you, when they don't answer a text or an email, they know exactly what they're doing. And I think with what's happened to me, I just feel it takes away your confidence. It makes you feel, I don't know whether worthy is the right word, but you feel, maybe you're not worth it. Maybe there's something wrong with you. It takes a huge toll on your health. And I think, of course, so often estrangement happens to people as we're getting older.
Yes.
And, you know, now I'm 70 plus, and you know, basically I've entered old age, as they, you know, the doctors would call it. And so you also, besides the estrangement, you're also thinking about, well, what's going to happen to me in the next 10, 15, 20 years, you know? How am I going to cope? Fortunately for me, you know, I'm not disabled. I haven't got a terminal illness or a long-term illness, but so I'm still able to drive, these sort of things, you know, I'm still independent.
Yes, yeah.
But, you know, I'm not always going to be independent. And you do think, well, who's going to be there for me? Who's going to, you know, take care of me, you know?
Yeah.
Well, basically, there isn't going to be anyone. It simply isn't. So,
okay, so having
it's very, very difficult.
Okay, so let's put it a slightly different way then. So, with your grandparents within your group and other grandparents that you connect with in the various ways that we all connect, for those grandparents who are just beginning on this awful journey, what would you say to them? I'm not saying advice because that's not a word I use, but what would you say to them?
I would say that you simply cannot change another person. You can only change your reaction and how you feel, and so therefore I think it's very important for you to get through it or to live with it by your side, is to make a life worth living of your own. And you know, I know it sounds an old cliche, but doing yoga and maybe meditation, try to enjoy yourself. Try to have some fun in your life. I mean, I love the countryside. I love nature. I love animals, and I have a cat who's a great comfort to me. I go out for walks, that type of thing. I mean, I haven't been able to see friends because of this pandemic, but you know, just try to do nice things and to be kind to yourself, and try and try to know that you are worth it, that you are valuable, that you have worth, you have your own worth,
We all
and that you can give so much to others. And I mean, with me having this group, I mean, it's been an absolute lifesaver, because I've been able to reach out to other people, and with my experience, I've been able to help others by telling them, well, you know, this is how I felt, but this is how I got through it, or, you know, and that I find that people find that very helpful.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They do. And I agree with absolutely everything that you're saying, and you're right. It is about helping other people, and I think maybe that's why we were put here in the first place. Maybe.
Yes, absolutely.
But Diana, is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish?
Well, what I would like to say is thank you for this opportunity, Jane. Thank you so much. And I hope that whoever, you know, listens to this video, I do hope that it will give them some hope, and know that we can survive it. We can definitely survive this. And as I said, just be kind to yourself, look after yourself, nurture yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Diana, so much for being so open and so honest. And I know that actually this discussion will help an awful lot of people. And thank you very much. Thank you, Diana.